Hi, I'm Debbie.
I'm Caitlyn. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age. Oh, she's dating at her age?
No. It's called Dating at Her Age. Oh, those poor things. Caitlyn, the topic for this podcast comes to us from one of our listeners who suggested we talk all about honesty in dating. So let's define dishonesty in dating. And that way, I think we can actually get to a point where we recognize what is honesty in dating. I think this is one of the biggest issues for me in dating because I don't feel like I can get to a place of falling in love with somebody unless I feel like they're an honest person, they're honest with me, they're honest with the world, and I can trust them. So in order to get to a place where I am falling in love, I have to have a foundation of honesty.
I agree with that. I think that honesty and trust is just the basis of any relationship, whether it's romantic or not, because it'll just fall apart if you can't trust that person and you don't believe they're going to be honest with you. I think it's the most important thing in relationships, probably.
I want to walk you through just a series of different experiences I've had while dating in my 50s. With situations that I felt like a person was being dishonest with me. I'm going to bounce them off of you. Some of them you're maybe familiar with. Some of them I think I'm divulging for the first time. And I want to get your read on, did I overreact? Because I have a very low tolerance for dishonesty. I don't give many people a second chance when I find out they've been dishonest with me. What's your tolerance level?
I think I'm more forgiving, but that could be a flaw. And it's something, as I say things out loud on this podcast, I learn about myself. Like, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that. But I am more of like a gray area type of person.
Are you a rationalized kind of person?
Yes. I think it might be a strike 3 type of thing for me. Like, you can learn someone's behaviors. And if you just realize, okay, this person is not changing, they're not trustworthy, I have to make a change here. But like if it's like a first instance, I just believe people can change and improve and grow and learn. So that's why I think I have that mindset. But there are patterns that can lead you into a different direction.
So let me give you these scenarios I've experienced in dating. And there are some cases where I was a strike 3. You're out. Yeah. They swung and missed. I gave them a second chance. They swung and missed again. And then strike 3, they're out. But there's some non-negotiables for me. I want to take you back to, what year was it? It's better for me to go back in my timeline. I was probably about 52 years old. So I've been divorced a few years at this point. And so it's probably 5 years ago. And a man reaches out to me on Facebook. He sends me a Facebook message. This isn't Facebook dating I'm on at this point. I don't even know if there was Facebook dating, but at any rate, I've used Facebook dating one time when I was out of state, just thinking, I'm on vacation. I'm going to check this thing out. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work for me because I'm more of a Bumble, kind of dater. I've used Hinge a little bit, but Facebook. So this is just straight Facebook. He sends me a message and he wants to take me to dinner. I don't know this guy, but we are friends on Facebook. I look at his Facebook profile. Doesn't seem like he's got anybody in his life. And I didn't even think to ask, like, are you single? I jumped to the conclusion that he must be single. Why in the world would he be asking me out on a date on a Friday night for dinner? And we were going to meet there, by the way, like I always do, meet, if he were married. You think I'm pretty safe in that assumption, or do you think I should have been the one to ask him, hey, by the way, are you married?
I mean, I think that it would be assumed that he was not if he was connecting with you.
Well, let me tell you something. I learned my lesson. Ask him. Just ask him over Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah. So I learned my lesson. So we end up at dinner, this guy on a Friday night.
Just remind you, he reached out to you.
Yeah, totally reached out to me.
Okay.
I wasn't trolling on him on Facebook.
Yeah.
He reached out to me, and I was flattered. I'll be honest with you. I was flattered. So I drive to the place we're going to meet for dinner. He's there, gets a table. During the discussion, he's talking about what I thought was his ex-wife, but he's talking about her in the present tense as though they're still married. So I clue in right away there's something up with this guy. Like, why am I here? Right? So I asked him flat out, are you married? And he said something to the effect of, we're thinking about getting divorced. Stop it.
Thinking about it. You're not. Where's the 1 year rule?
Where's the door is what I thought of. How can I just catapult myself out of the situation right now and get my car and speed off? Like, I don't want to have anything to do with a man who's married. Nothing.
Well, separation crossed his mind, so I figured he'd go see what other fish are out there. Is that what happened
Who's
there?
most gullible?
Yeah.
I was
But
gullible.
That's crazy. People amaze me.
So I left early from that dinner. Like, it was kind of like, you want dessert? No, I don't want dessert. You kidding me? I'm out. So we wrapped it up. Never talked to that man again. I don't remember if I blocked him on Facebook. I was pretty,
I'd block him.
I got to the point where, I then sort of went to the assumption that they aren't married, even if they're on dating apps. Like, or, are you divorced? Are you divorced? I don't want to be caught in that. In a moment, I'm going to get into what I think are some of the harms of being dishonest. Was he dishonest with me by not telling me over Facebook? Oh, let me go even back. Was he dishonest with me by asking me out on a date when he's married?
Yeah, very much so.
So there's a lot of layers to dishonesty with this kind of scenario in my mind. It's not only being dishonest with me, you're being dishonest with your family who's counting on you. You're being dishonest with yourself. So that was one scenario. So on a scale of 1 to 3, rate how dishonest it was. 3 being the most dishonest, 1 being kind of dishonest.
I mean, 3 out of the gates by asking you the question, 2 because he actually told you when you were at dinner. Correct. Yeah. So like he got there, but it was dishonest from the beginning. So honestly, it's a 3 for me overall.
3. He gets that scenario gets a 3 on a scale of 1 to 3. 3 being the most dishonest. The second scenario was dating a man who confessed that he wanted to be with me and he wasn't seeing anybody else. I guess confession isn't the right word. Professed, declared, I was the one. Well, it turns out that he was still on a dating app and that he was seeing at least one other woman that I became aware of. So on a scale of 1 to 3, how dishonest was he in the moment when he said he wanted to be with me?
These are all probably going to get 3s for me. It's a 3.
Super dishonest.
He's wanting to be exclusive, but he's not actually being exclusive. Like, that's a lie.
Well, I look at that and I think, well, maybe he did want to be with me. Unfortunately, he was tied up with other women, which he didn't tell me about.
Both things can be true and people can be confused, but...
He gets a 3+.
Yeah, I just...
What if they tell you they're not seeing anyone else, but they are?
That's massive. Gets a 5.
5. Okay, we're off the charts. So in another scenario, I was dating a man, and we'd been dating for a little while. Okay, this isn't like 1 week of dating, and I expect to know all the things about his background. But to me, being dishonest by omission, it rises to the level of just being completely dishonest. So he left out the part in his life where he had amassed a significant, I'm not talking about a little bit, I'm talking about a significant amount of eye-popping, headache-wrenching debt. And I went through a good portion of our dating relationship not knowing anything about this. And I actually stumbled onto it through just a series of really weird scenarios. Like, I just stumbled onto that in that relationship. And then it opened up a whole, a can of worms. By not telling me after I would say like 3 months where we're starting to really solidify that we are a couple, that we're exclusive, by not telling me, hey, I've got this like horrible situation with debt going on. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. I'm working on it. I'm trying to figure out. Doesn't say a word to me. On a scale of 1 to 3, how dishonest is that?
I think I could understand why they wouldn't say it at the beginning of a relationship. Why? Because at least from my perspective, at the beginning of a relationship, you're just figuring out if you even like their personality, like them. So I could see why they waited a teeny bit, but I do agree at a certain point, 3 months, whatever, maybe a month even into that, as you get to know them, they can start opening up about that. But if you know that right off of the bat, it's just going to immediately push them away push your interest away. And maybe that's okay because you're just like, no, I'm not dealing with that. But there could be more to it in that way. And if you already kind of have a bond with them, you could see it from a different perspective, if I'm making sense by saying that.
So in the beginning, it would be a 0 in terms of dishonesty because you don't feel like walking into the first few dates, you need to walk in with, your credit score.
I don't think so.
Okay.
That's my perspective. I don't know if it's a 0. It's still, but it's not like that's the main topic of conversation. Do you flat out ask someone like, how much debt are you in?
I give them a grade. Maybe I should.
Because if they just said, no, I'm not, like, that's different. Like, it's not really something that people just bring up at the beginning of discussion.
Well, I think there's a reason for this. I think there's probably some humiliation
And I agree,
involved.
because I can feel that when I have debt. Like, I don't want to talk about it, but I'll talk about it eventually because it is something I can be transparent
about. Also not recognizing when is the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you really like the person, are they going to run?
Yeah.
Before they even get to know me.
Yeah, there's layers to that.
But I do feel like after 3 months, and when you start to, and it may be different for you at your age, 29,
probably,
mine, 57, where after 3 months, it's like disclose that.
Yeah.
Just disclose it. Have that conversation and then let that person you're dating make that decision if that scenario works for them. Maybe they're super savvy with money and there's a way that they could, I'm not saying bail you out, but they could certainly send you in a direction that would be helpful to you.
We talked about that with financial planner Shane Stewart about
in
guidance.
One of our episodes.
Yeah, like we have different perspectives on that because there's a different runway there, but like having guidance and support through that can help someone correct
I think
patterns.
I think your runway is in their 20s. Maybe there's a chance for them to self-correct. Mm-hmm. But in their 50s, there might be a whole other layers of situations going on with their finances. It just goes beyond the debt. And maybe they've made a life habit of being significantly in debt or not paying for their obligations.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I can see kind of both perspectives of that, but I don't think it would be something I would say on the very first interaction because I wouldn't want to just push. If you do that to everybody and just try to find the one thing that's wrong with them, you're going to have no luck because everyone's got the bag of bones in their closet or whatever. That may creep up, but it's just a matter of how they're handling it and how much it affects you if you are going to get into that serious relationship.
Here's another honesty issue that I've encountered in dating. I've had all the interesting scenarios thrown at me. And it's like literally I'm sitting across the table at a restaurant from a man who's admitting that they misremembered something. And I'm like, look on my face must be like, how do you not know that when you're talking to me, or chatting with me on a dating app or on the phone? And so there's a scenario. He says he's been married 2 times, and I get to the date and find out it's actually, he forgot about the 3rd ex-wife. Is that dishonesty to bait me to the first date? Because 2 ex-wives sounds so much better than 3 ex-wives.
I mean, yes, unless he did actually forget. But if he was just trying to sweeten it up, then yeah, that's very dishonest. Like, why not just say you had 3?
I find it odd, and I actually will run from men who do this. And I'll talk about that when I talk about the downsides and the harms that are created from dishonesty in just a few minutes. But like, just tell me up front. Mm-hmm. You had 3 ex-wives. Don't tell me 2. Don't tell me 1. It's just, and the other thing I want to put under this as well is misremembering how many kids they have.
I don't get that.
I've had that happen.
That's weird to me. I don't know.
I wouldn't say they misremember. Perhaps a better way of putting it, a more honest way of putting it, is they just misled me on how many kids they have.
That's lying. That's misleading. Why are you afraid of saying that?
I also look at this from my mom perspective. These are your children.
Right. They're going to find out eventually.
Never deny how many kids I have. Like, my 3 kids are the most important in my life, above all. always say, I have 3 kids. They're in their 20s now. And sometimes I get sad because, I can't have one myself anymore. And we don't do as many family vacations anymore because they're busy with their lives. I loved being a mom. I loved raising kids. So the idea that a man will pop into my life temporarily and not remember how many kids he has, that just breaks my heart.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know.
This is just my take, okay? I think they might do this because they feel like I'll judge them for how many kids they have, or that I'm trying to add up the amount of child support payments in my head that are going out the door every month, which I have no idea in the beginning, like what's going on with all that. I just want to get to know you. So it's a red flag to me. And I feel like it's dishonest when they sit down and they give me a wrong number with their kid count.
Well, you're going to find out eventually. So that's why I never understand that I agree. Be upfront, because it's weird when you have to break the news that there's more. It's not an issue.
And it is curious to me how we end up finding these things out. I mean, I have been in dating relationships where I've found things out because I've gone to a family event and somebody says something and I'm like, oh, that's news to me. I didn't know that about their life.
And they haven't looped them in on their web of lies. Just don't do that.
I've gone out on double dates where I've met friends who loop me in on details.
It's a lot more simple if you just tell the truth.
Yeah, it's much easier to remember your life if you're not lying about things, right?
Less to keep track of.
So on a scale of 1 to 3, I guess, forgetting how many kids you have is a 3 in terms of dishonesty.
They're all 3s. Just don't lie. Just be honest. They're, like I said, that one I don't see a gray area in, but
omitting criminal background information in the initial chatting phase on a dating app.
I guess defining initial chatting phase is how long, but I see that one almost the same as the financial one with the debt. Is like it's another thing that's going to scare you off. But also, it's something important depending on the severity. I don't know.
What about minimizing a criminal background? I've had men on dates minimize, or on dating apps, minimize their criminal background. And then when I initiate my DIY background checkers method, I find out that's a lot more significant than I thought. I've actually also, Caitlyn, I'll just make a note of this. I recently had a woman reach out to me over social media. And she said she was dating a man who, and I'm gonna paraphrase this. She felt should not have been sentenced to prison time for his criminal case, but that he had served prison time in the federal system. And I was talking back and forth with her over this the dating app. It wasn't a dating app, a social media app that we were on. And I was explaining, well, the reason he probably served so much time is because he was prosecuted in the federal system, which there are minimum mandatory sentences in the federal system, not always the case in state court. But it was almost as though when I was conversing back and forth with her on the social media app that I felt as though maybe he had minimized to her the significance of his crime. So you think just be right up front.
I mean, like I feel like when the conversation opens itself up, because that's eventually going to happen, hopefully, it doesn't have to be the first interaction. I feel like that is just the scaring things away, but just say what happened, how it is, and then they can determine. Because if you're on a date with Debbie Dujanovic, she's going to look you up. But like, as you should, though, because people probably do that a lot more often than people realize, and others aren't just checking. What
about not being honest about going to college? That's another one on my list.
Why? I mean, I get it's probably the same thing with like humiliation or wanting to be, but just it's okay. That's actually like maybe for your generation, it's not a normal thing now, but it is normal for, I think, less people are going to college due to the cost and also just more opportunities with entrepreneurship and stuff like that and social media. In my life, it's not that uncommon, but I just don't. Why lie?
Yeah, it's not about. To me, it's not about the degree, the diploma. It is about the deception.
Yeah, Like, it's okay. Like, are you a smart person? Not all smart people go to college. I feel like you can be successful without that. I mean, I appreciate people who go to college. I think that means you can work hard. But you're just deceiving me. It's not that deep on that level.
And here's another one. What about dishonesty over either going to work when they say that they're going to work, but they're not really going to work, or where they work? So they're deceptive or dishonest about either their line of work or how often they work, especially maybe they don't have a full-time job.
That just...
If they want to make it sound like they do.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
All these are threes for you.
They're trying... Yeah, it's just because it's deceiving. It's not being honest with who you are and what you're doing. Because, like, for me, I'm a very open perspective person. It doesn't really, like, I don't know. I can try to understand all those things. Would it be a red flag that you can't keep a consistent job? Yeah, probably. But I don't know. Just, you're going to find out eventually. I keep saying that, but it's true. So why make up a story that you're somebody who you're not?
You have validated me. Shockingly, I felt like I was just too quick to run in these different scenarios that have actually happened in my dating experience. I've shared with you actual scenarios that have happened to me. And I do feel like, well, maybe I'm just too judgy. I expect too much, that I should give some wiggle room to honesty. Like, I don't think you have to be perfect. What I do feel like is you have to be perfectly honest with me, because in order for me to go to a place of exclusivity and love, I do need a foundation of honesty and trust.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it does depend on, I guess this is maybe just my younger perspective of like the gray area I keep mentioning, because it's like if that trust issue and not wanting to share that information, it could be stemming from something like someone else giving them backlash on that in a previous relationship or something. So they're choosing to kind of stray from that because they don't want to see that result. But I think it all just ties back to who you really are as a person. And if you catch them in the lie and they correct it and then choose not to lie after that, I can see, as long as you are improving and growing and learning from that and don't do it again, that's when I'm like, okay, I can give you another chance. But if it's just a pattern of lies, it's a red flag off of this.
Yeah,
top.
I do get worried about the layers of deception.
Yeah.
Like, is this just a one-off? Or if you're lying about how many times you're married, are you also lying and being deceptive about how many children you have? Are you being deceptive then about how much debt you have? Are you being deceptive about, how many jobs you have to work or aren't working? Concerns me when somebody gives themselves permission to be dishonest in what they claim they want as a relationship. Where does the dishonesty end and the honesty begin?
Yeah.
Like I don't want that line to be blurred. I want it to be very clear for me.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I respect people a lot more who are just upfront, and that's what I prefer. I try to be understanding and whatnot, but my preference is just to be like, okay, let's be upfront. We're all humans. We've made mistakes and stuff. So,
what layers of dishonesty have you found yourself caught in relationships or your situationships or chatting online with men on dating apps?
I am trying to think if I have ever been lied to my face specifically, like you've explained. I can't think of anything, but also it might just be I maybe have been and I just am ignorant and don't know, and I just believed them because that's who I am as a person. But there are, when I kind of dig deep down into situations I've been in, I have been misled and deceived. Primarily, like the definition of a situationship is a relationship without labels, but it's stemming on one person, one party, maybe two, but usually one party, kind of keeping you hooked in. And that means, like, they say, oh, I don't want to lose you. I really care about you. I want to be with you. I'm just not there yet. And then they never get there. But it's that is deception, because it's like an almost. And you're like, okay, when are you going to get there? You say you like me, but I don't know if they actually do like you or respect you enough, because they're not letting you off the hook. They just want to keep you as theirs while they go live their own life. And I just feel like that is deceiving.
So you feel like that's not being totally honest with you?
No. I mean, And I still don't even
'Cause
know.
They may say something like, "Well, I really just didn't know at the time. I wasn't ready."
And that's okay, but they don't say it that directly. In my experience, that's happened to me a couple times, but then it loops back around. So, and I can understand conflicting emotions because you do like someone, you have feelings for them, but you are not there. But it would be so much easier on me or the other party to just say, you can let go of me, you can let go of this. I'm not where I need to be. And I like it even if you have feelings for me or whatever, but like I just would much rather them tell me to go move on with my life and it's not happening right now, and just be very direct with that because it gives me a path because I feel like I've gone in circles with that for a very long time. So I appreciate just that directness and being upfront.
You'd rather have somebody rip the Band-Aid off and tell you it's not going to work out than be strung along with hope.
It's probably in part not wanting to hurt me or that person that you're trying to tell. I would imagine see that, but in the long run, you're kind of hurting us both because I have been lied to in a way where it's more being led on, where they say they want this, they want to do this, and then nothing follows. So it's just kind of an endless cycle. And that is, it's a lie, because when you say, hey, I'm going to start working on my communication and we're going to work on this, and then I hear nothing, it's a lie, kind of. So I don't know. That's really where I feel like I relate to this. And it's just, I would rather people just tell me like, I can't stand you. I want nothing to do with you. That would be easier. It would be hard to hear that, but it would be easier than being strung around and just holding on to hope and nothing because they're saying things but not showing it. So, and you never know, like in the situationship realm, like I do believe in the situationships I've been in, they do have feelings for me and that's not a factor, and they do care, but they don't care enough to actually like detach and let me go and actually be upfront and have that hard conversation of where things are at.
Has been hurtful for you.
Of course. It's always hurtful when you're confused and strung along, and then you have to give yourself closure, and that's the hardest part. And it would just be so much easier if they were upfront and you both came to the agreement and understanding of, this isn't happening.
So this might be a good time to flip the script. Do you feel at any point that in relationships you've been dishonest with yourself?
Yes, 100%.
How so?
Well, just kind of believing the delusion of that and holding on to that hope. And I think that anyone can relate to that. But you lie to yourself about all of these different things like, oh, they'll get there. Oh, they do care about me. Oh, they're just, dealing with this thing. Oh, they're going to do this. And it's all like, maybe that's true, but you're talking yourself into nowhere.
So here's where in areas of dating that I feel like I could do better, where I've misled, been dishonest with a man, I've dated like one date, is I do give men that I'm not interested in a second date with some false hope. Now, I don't think it's a good idea at all to be across the table from somebody and when they ask for a second date, go, no, I'm not interested. Right? Like there is some savvy and also some safety involved with that. Most men might take that okay, but I just don't want to then get up from the table and walk to my car alone. I want to do it in a way it's going to be a little more delicate than that. So what I've come up with for this, because in the beginning, I know I was pretty awkward about it. Like, I don't agree with ghosting. I don't like that. I don't want to be ghosted. I don't want to be the one who's ghosted. So what I've done is I've kept in my notes section of my phone just a little, a pre-scripted, I know, sounds super impersonal, text message that, maybe I have to make a change or two and edit to before I send it to him. But it's just pre-scripted of, hey, really had a great time getting to know you, not feeling the connection that I'm looking for. I know we talked about a second date. I think I'm going to take a pass. And that is usually enough. I usually don't get a text back. Occasionally I do. Just thanking me, and that's about all they do. They don't ask follow-up questions. Like, how can I change myself so we can go on a second date? Oh, they get the hint. But that's helped me a lot in being more upfront, honest immediately, instead of, oh, okay, well, we can get back to you after I check my schedule and all that other. No. And then I don't even deal with it at the restaurant. If they do ask me, I'll just say, let me check into things in my schedule, see what things look like. Yeah, or get in touch with me. And sometimes I never hear back from them either. But that's one way of dealing with it, because I do think being honest with people almost immediately, like you talked about in situationships, does alleviate a lot of hurt feelings and emotional.
Well, and it doesn't have to be like, yeah, the rejection is hard. It just is. But like I said, I respect people so much more by just being upfront, because then it just kind of like puts you on the next path. Like, okay, this isn't it. This isn't happening. And we're adults. We understand that it's like if there wasn't a connection there wasn't a connection there. It's okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 3, how harmful or hurtful has it been to you that when somebody is not upfront with you right away, that this probably isn't going to materialize into anything that's a forever relationship?
3,000.
It's way off the charts.
Well, for me, as we've talked about, it lasted longer than it should have. But it's because you hold on to that hope. And, as I've gone through my 20s, I've learned a lot. But yeah, it's caused a lot of pain, and I still deal with it. So it's just, you're constantly healing from that. But I've learned that it is hard to not sugarcoat when you're talking to someone. If you are on the flip side and you're not quite sure, it's hard to be like, oh, it's not hard. You could say, I'm not quite sure where I'm at right now. I do like you. I'm appreciative, but it's kind of the same thing. And at some point you have to be like, I'm not there right now. Hopefully we can reconnect, or let's just move on with our lives. And eventually you have to do that.
Let me get into how I have felt hurt. I've felt harmed when I'm caught in situations that I feel a man's been dishonest with me. The first one would be, the obvious one for me is, you're married, you're in a committed relationship. She thinks everything's fine. And also, if they say, well, we're talking about divorce, I'd like to hear her version of that. Because are you the only one who's talking in your head about divorce? And I don't even want to be here to begin with, unless you have a divorce decree and you have done the work to heal. You have done the work to get yourself in an emotional place. If you have children, you've worked through it with them as well. I don't want to be involved in this scenario. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be seen with you. I don't want to be talking to you. I don't want to have my phone number on your cell phone bill. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I think that puts me in a particularly horrible situation. There's jealousy that could come up. I'm naive that they're married. They have kids. That's just not my thing. I'm vehemently opposed to getting involved in this scenario. So to me, this is one of those that I have to, I just won't have nothing to do with. So on a scale of 1 to 3 for dishonesty, to me, I'm with you. It's a 3,000.
As you should be. I feel like that is just it'll cause a tangled mess, and it doesn't need to happen until you're at a certain point. So if you're wanting to be with somebody else, yeah, you got to...
What do you mean it doesn't need to happen if you're at a certain point?
I just mean if you have not closed off a relationship.
Oh, starting a new relationship.
Yeah, there's a certain timeline that goes with that. And I just think that it needs to be a clean slate. Cleanish slate. Everyone's got problems, but...
I'm not sure, and I don't stick around to ask, if men who have done this recognize all of the harmful effects that this has on the single woman who has done the work, who is divorced, who has gone through therapy, who has emotionally gotten to a spot where she's ready to date again, to get sucked into a scenario like that. I don't know that they recognize that, and that scares me.
Yeah, I don't think that you should. I mean, this is just a healing journey on its own. Like you said, you did the work, but it's just, they just may not. I'm not justifying it at all. You shouldn't do that. But they just don't realize that they need to heal, and they're just trying to rush to the next thing. But that is just going to cause problems, as far as I know, because you have to work through your own stuff.
Well, if they're married, they're married. They're off the market.
Yeah.
If you're married, view, they're off the market.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking after you've decided to divorce. But yeah, once it's finalized, and I think we've discussed you need some space after that.
In my view, too, speaking to what you just brought up, is there is a lot of work that happens after divorce. There's separation of property. There might be a sale of a home. There's emotional healing that goes into it. I've talked a lot about kids. Obviously, I care a lot about kids, all kids, not just my own kids.
Mm-hmm.
How are they being? Are they healing? And that's why I'm like, there's a time and a place, and that's not the time and the place is immediately post-divorce for me to get involved. So to me, there has to be a significant amount of time between divorce decree and dating. I usually say a 1 to 2 year waiting period. The longer I've dated, the more I've recognized that 2 years, and there's no magic number really, because you just don't know what scenario is. I've been out with men who years after divorce are talking about taking their ex-wives back to court to deal with alimony. I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with that kind of stuff. Like, heal. Hopefully you've powered through it. You've figured it out. You've divided up your assets. The alimony's settled. I don't want to be roped into dealing with those kinds of scenarios. So that to me is one of the things that is emotionally harmful potentially to me.
What do you, just follow up on that?
Yeah.
I've heard people say that they've kind of grieved the relationship while still in the marriage or in the relationship, like years before the divorce actually happened. What do you think that there's validity to that? Like they're finally just hitting the divorce, but it's been done for years. What do you feel about that?
I still want a significant amount of time and space behind the settlement of the divorce if I'm dating somebody. That may very well be the case. But I do feel like that's just not a scenario that I want to put myself in. Oh, I've heard that before. Like,
which that's emotional.
The relationship was dead long before we got divorced. We lived together. We lived in separate bedrooms. I've heard that. Somebody that was widowed had said that, their wife had been sick for quite some time, and so they had plenty of time to grieve. I just think there's just a lot there that I am not in any sort of position. I'm not an expert at dealing with, and I wouldn't want to insert myself because look, a relationship is like building a new relationship is a lot of work. It's a lot of emotional energy that needs to go into it. You're trying to fall in love with somebody. You're trying to get to know somebody. And at my age, there is a lot of history to get to know and a lot of things to try to couple together. So you also have to start in a place where you're ready for that new journey.
Yeah. And I guess emotionally they could be ready, but there, as you mentioned, like there's a lot of kind of just legal things that have to be figured out if you are just doing the divorce now. So that makes sense.
So that's one of the harms. The other thing I want to just talk about, and we've talked about this in that previous episode about with Shane Stewart, a certified financial planner, about merging finances, is when somebody is misleading me about their financial circumstances, I just feel like at my age, that is a real risky situation I'm being put in. Because let's just say that I'm so in love that I run out and together we buy a car, and then I find out, there's this massive amount of debt.
That's not how you want to find out. You should know before.
I mean, I don't want the repo person outside my house taking the car away from me to find out that there's been all kinds of problems financially, whether, debt hasn't been paid, taxes haven't been paid. So it puts me in a position of being very on guard. Sometimes I think I'm too on guard about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But just imagine like getting up for work every day, like so many of us do, and going to work, working our 8 to 10, 12 hours, 14-hour days, depending on what job you have, you're working weekends. And then somebody inserting themselves into your life and not being honest with you about that. That's what I think about. Like, how many times have I come close, dating in my 50s, to working out scenarios where I maybe sign on the dotted line with a man, not ever asking, hey, let me see your credit score. Which now I'm thinking, you know what? You're right. Second date, we're bringing our credit scores. And actually, we're not even going to bring our credit scores. We're going to log on to the apps. We're going to log on to the credit score app, and we're going to review it together online. Because I'm also thinking, well, if you're, I don't want you to create some shiny portfolio on your Epson printer at home. About how savvy you are with your finances. This scares me, Caitlyn, actually, as I look to the future, and I'm like, what would happen if I wound up being deceived by a man who I'm supposed to trust?
Yeah.
What would become of me? How would my kids handle this? Think about that. You sign somebody on your house, you sign somebody on a card, you put somebody on your IRA, whatever it is, you have your bank account. So that scares me.
I mean, as it should, because I agree with that. Because even just in the dating phase, I think that because I'm 29, I might as well start saying 30 at this point. I'm almost there, but we are still kind of figuring it out. I have debt, and I'm working really hard to get through that. But life is hard, and I feel like my generation hasn't been dealt the best cards with that. So
Sure.
It's very easy to get into debt, like medical bankruptcy. I know some of my friends have dealt with that just because of emergency situations, and you're just kind of in that. And I that's where I'm like the gray area of understanding and what are you doing about it now? And there's time to correct. But I would definitely not be making any strong financial decisions or moves with someone that I was not very aware of their financial situation and also kind of their patterns. And that takes time to know. It's not something I would do in the first year. It would be like years in. I don't know how much time we all have. But like that, learning someone's personality and spending behavior, it takes time. And you have to watch for it and kind of just really get to know that person and go on trips with them. And, it's just a day-to-day life. Like, how are they spending their money every day?
What I recognize when we talk about honesty and we're talking this through is it is the foundation.
It is.
It is the foundation for so many decisions that if you're building trust with somebody, you are making decisions while dating based on that trust. And what you have to think about is are they being honest with me? So to me, I go back to the beginning. What I said is, for me to fall in love, I have to have a foundation of honesty from a man. It's 100%.
Yeah, I don't think a relationship can survive without it. It's just like, what are you doing if you're not being honest? Like, this is a life partner that you're looking for it potentially. Maybe if you're just casually dating, it's not that deep. But if you're looking for that life partner that you're literally going to do life with, yeah, it's the foundation of it all. And if you can just be transparent and tell it like it is, and it's a mutual understanding, we're honest. I'm going to tell you when I mess up. I'm going to tell you when I accidentally bought this thing that was too expensive and now we got to deal with it if you're in a marriage situation or whatever. But like, if you don't have that, it's just all going to fall apart. Because I feel like my situations have lacked that slightly. As I've mentioned, I don't really feel like I've been lied to directly to my face. Maybe I have. But if that would have just being upfront and transparent, it would have helped a lot of situations. And it got there as more time went on, which is kind of what I was explaining. But it takes time as well. But we don't all have that much time to figure this stuff out.
Speaking of
me, though, I don't know. I feel like I just am getting...
You got 30 years left before you catch my age.
I know, but like, I don't have kids
29.
yet. So that's really the only thing that I think about is like, my clock is ticking if I ever want kids. You know what I mean? So it's like, I better find someone. But also, I'm not going to rush into that kind of thing if it's not the right person. So...
What's your biggest takeaway from our discussion?
Don't lie. I don't know, really just how important it is to be upfront, even if it hurts and it's embarrassing or whatever. But I just think people will respect you more in the long run if you were upfront. And maybe it's not on the first date, but you don't have to sugarcoat things. Just tell it like it is, because we're all understanding adults. And maybe not everyone's like that. Maybe not everyone takes it understanding and they freak out and they'll have backlash. But from my perspective, I just feel like I am too understanding sometimes.
My biggest takeaway is for some reason we always find out.
Well, yeah,
I don't,
because
the universe just leads us down a path when sometimes we'll find out quickly. Sometimes it'll take us a little longer to figure it out. So being upfront with somebody about our successes and our shortcomings, not, as you said, I think well said, don't sugarcoat. Just be honest. They're gonna find out anyway. I mean, they just somehow, some way, it's just really hard to hide a deep secret. And if you're trying to do that through deception, eventually it's going to come out. They're going to go somewhere with you where a former boss shows up and says something like, "Hey, really sorry that I had to fire you." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Or somebody in your family says, "Whatever happened to your fourth ex-spouse? Whatever happened to your fourth ex-husband or your fourth ex-wife?"
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, wait a minute, I thought you only had two." Somehow it always comes out. And then what happens is that trust is then gone. If any trust that's been built is gone, and that foundation of honesty has been obliterated.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why you can't keep track of all the lies. Like it's all going to come out eventually. And so, yeah, really just being upfront. I don't know. I just respect people more when they do that, even if it's painful.
Great conversation. Next in our Dater Hater segment, an email from one of our listeners talking about dating sabbaticals. That's straight ahead. Dater Hater. So we got an email, Caitlyn, from one of our listeners, and he says, "I really relate to Debbie's sabbatical from dating." He said after his divorce, he went on a year of frenetic dating. Dozens of dates, and then he finally put himself on a dating moratorium, and it was the most peaceful time since his divorce. And he says, "I'm back dating again now, but it's more measured, thoughtful, and intentional." So he was listening to one of our episodes where we talk about dating sabbaticals, and I am on one right now. I went back on a dating app, tried to date long distance. It was a flop. Let's be honest with you. It was a total flop. I have a lot to say about that.
I want to know more.
So rejected.
I didn't know.
I connected with a man in Arizona, my home state, which I was literally doing a happy dance over. I'm like, woohoo! I know the area so well. I grew up there, Arizona. And he messages me back. Now, he's obviously got his dating profile open like mine does, to date long distance. So I was like, okay, he's got to be interested, right? He messages me back. He's like, "Sorry you don't live closer." Like, well, that's weak. Isn't that the point of dating long distance? And then another guy that I connected with in Colorado, he actually sent me a voice message on the dating app. And
I love it. I love those.
He was explaining to me how to use the voice message feature.
I like that because it's like a phone call, but you don't have to be on the phone with them all the time.
So he messages me. I get up in the morning, Saturday morning, making my coffee, and I listen to his message. And he's teaching me how to do the voice message feature. And I'm like, "There's hope. I'm marrying this man. That's it. This is it. This is the one." And I sent him a message, and he said to me, "Oh, I see why you chose a career in radio." That was his response, which I suppose is a compliment, but I was like, "Well, actually," and I didn't say any of this. Like, I'm in radio now, but okay, anyway. So that's the last I communicated with him. He never messaged me back, and then they both vanished from the dating app.
I have a question.
There's a third guy too from the Phoenix area, and that one flopped as well.
So they just didn't respond, and one left you like, "I wish you didn't."
One disconnected, the guy from the Phoenix area. He says, "Well, first of all, I'm on vacation," because I messaged him first. "I'm on vacation. I'll get back to you when I get back home." I'm like, okay, that's weird. Not interested in me, I guess.
Or that could just mean like he's busy and not on the dating app at this moment. Like, but when he gets back settled, I could see how. So
then he sent his phone number on the dating app. I'm like, I'm not game for that. We're not going off the dating app. Yeah, I haven't even had one chat with you. Well, one very basic chat. Then the next thing I knew, popped on the dating app and he deleted our connection. So
that's weird. I'm just curious if you had asked, "Are you open to dating long distance?" Is that something that you've ever been open to? I tend to go to Arizona often because I'm from there. So I'm just wondering if that question ever came up.
So the one guy who said, "Oh, too bad you don't live closer." I said, "Well, I'm from that area, love the area, I get home a lot." Yeah, he was unimpressed.
So that's just
so
he's
I
not
went
open
on.
to it, yeah.
My point of saying all that is, oh, poor Deb. Yeah, you're right. I'm still single. I said, forget it. I'm going on another dating sabbatical. So I don't know the exact number of days I was back on the app, but I want to say 6 weeks, which is one of my shortest runs before I'm taking another sabbatical. So I want to say this to our listener about your dating sabbatical. And you say that your dating sabbatical was the most peaceful time since your divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Dating sabbaticals, for me, are the most peaceful time in dating. When I'm dating, I'm intentional about it. I'm all in. I am curious to get to know more about this person. Then I start overthinking it. Like, I haven't heard from him in a couple of days. He's dumped me already. He hasn't even given me a chance. Dating sabbaticals are glorious. Let me tell you how I've started to do these dating sabbaticals. And I can't remember if I talked about this in one of the previous episodes, but I've started to do it like this. I delete my profile. Okay. My profile, if I haven't connected with somebody that I'm going to start dating, is not working. Okay. So that it's not working, right? It's not connecting me with prospects. So something's not working in my profile. I don't have enough pictures. Whatever words I've used aren't meshing with somebody out there with my future connection. So I just delete it. And then I also delete the app from my phone so I'm not tempted to peek. And then I plan the heck out of the next several weeks. By the time we drop this episode, this coming weekend will have passed. But I have 3 events I'm going to this weekend. Plus, the weather's supposed to be beautiful in Utah. The moment I say that, it'll change. It's supposed to be beautiful. We're expecting beautiful weather. I'm planning on paddleboarding again, getting more paddleboarding in before the snow flies. So I pack my weeks ahead with tons of stuff to do that I'm not even tempted to get back on the dating app.
Which that's just an example of romanticizing your life and doing things for you, which you should be doing while you're on the dating apps anyways. That's just my thought.
I'm getting better.
But
thanks to you.
Well, I do just think, and I feel like I've just been on a sabbatical forever, and because I do feel like I am a little bit. My goal is to meet someone in the wild, so I don't like the dating apps. I've tried to get back on them. I go in phases. I dabble sometimes, and I'm just like, it just doesn't feel right to me. It feels ingenuine. That's just my perspective.
Disingenuous?
Yeah, it just feels like it's forced, which I just feel like dating is, sometimes it's forced. But you do have to put energy into it, and your brain is taken up by that energy to keep conversations going if you're talking to 1 or 2 people trying to explore connections. And that's why part of my thing is I'm not a great texter some days. Some days I'm better, stuff like that. You do have to put active energy into it, and it takes up space in your life if it's a priority to you. But I just think when you're on the dating apps and doing that cleanse and being aware of it is very important, because you can release that space, and then you're kind of putting that energy back into yourself by doing things you love.
Yeah, when you get off of them.
And hopeful. Yeah. And to me, that's my delusion hope of like, okay, I'm doing this for myself. Someone's just going to naturally walk in. That's the delusion, that's my hope, because it feels more natural.
I think it's going to happen for you.
And that's...
I really do believe that
same
with
to you.
intention. Thank you. Bottle that, because I don't feel that. Bottle that and, hold that thought for me, because I just don't feel that same way. It's interesting because I'm thinking back to when I was in my 20s, feeling a lot like you felt. Like, when am I going to meet somebody? You were just talking about, when am I going to meet somebody? I want to have kids one day. Feel like the clock is ticking. Somebody did just walk into my life. You want to meet somebody in the wild. And I met my ex-husband, and we were married 21 years, and we had a lot of great times together and had 3 awesome kids, just amazing kids. We met at 2 different locations. I was a television news reporter in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was sent in December. This is crazy. In December of '93 to a bank robbery in Salt Lake City to cover it as a TV news reporter. And that's the first time I encountered my future husband. He was a police officer on the scene. And we had a funny exchange at the moment. Believe it or not, it was a funny exchange. And I won't get into that. But he went on about it. Didn't hear from him again. It turns out we were about the same age. We were in our 20s, late 20s. And then it is though the universe intended us to see each other again, because it was May 20th, I remember the date, of 1994, that there was a terrible, terrible car crash involving it wasn't a pedestrian, it was a crossing guard in Salt Lake County. Just a tragedy. It was a hit and run crash. And I show up and there's Chris. Yeah, There's Chris again. And we reconnect. I was covering the story is why I was sent to that scene. 5 months later, 6 months later, I was sent to that scene and there he was. And we reconnected. He said, "Oh, I remember you from the bank robbery." So after that, in July of that year, we had connected through mutual contacts. He'd asked about me through a mutual contact that knew me, and we started dating. What I'm saying is, the universe has its eye out for you.
Which I think it's true for you as well.
Thank you.
I just feel like we can go through love cycles. I've always believed that. Like people always, I just think that you can go through cycles and sometimes those cycles end and you start a new one. Sometimes they come back around, stuff like that. But I think when we're talking about the sabbatical and like kind of you're consumed with the apps. But once you release those and kind of take that sabbatical and be open, but you have to be open to it, right? You can't be closed off. Those things can happen. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a hopeless romantic and think that's how it should be. But I just think that the sabbatical part of that is possibly when those things happen. It comes when you don't expect it. So it's important to take those breaks and not be so hyper-focused on it, because you never know what's going to come your way. And it allows you to do that self-reflection and really kind of look at what you really want, which is what I was saying. Like, I feel like I've been in a sabbatical forever, but I've been tied up with situationships. And then I have tried to go on dates here and there, and then I kind of go back to not doing that. But I just know that when I've been trying to force it, I am not at peace at all. I'm stressed. And that's when I'm like, okay, you need to take a step back. Because you just need to let whatever happen that's going to happen.
Well, I'm right back there with you. I'm trying to meet somebody in the wild now, apparently.
I mean, I don't know. I just don't. To me, I've always felt, I just have never connected with the dating apps. I've never had like the best. I don't have like a negative
Try
experience.
dating long distance on the dating apps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. And I mean, the long distance thing.
That did not go well for me.
And it still could, though. It just might have been those select few. You never know. Like, people could be open to it. They just may not. You may have just connected to the wrong ones. Maybe people are more open to that. Maybe you need to put that in your bio, open to long distance.
I love that.
And maybe you should.
That's great. And that's why I'm glad right now that I literally deleted my profile, because that is a great suggestion. I did not put that in my profile. I just assumed that because my geography was wide open to most of the United States, and their geography is open to that they would recognize that I'm interested in dating long distance.
Yeah, not everybody even knows what their settings are, honestly. So maybe they don't know what their settings are.
Or they just weren't interested in me.
Or they were, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it just isn't. That's what dating is for.
But at least I got one thing out of it. I learned how to use the voice option to send messages to men who can then tell me, "Wow, I can see why you've chosen a career in radio."
Which is great, but I want to say I do like the voice memo. I use it with my friends sometimes, just into my texting app and whatnot. But I like it because you can get more context as to what they're saying in a text, but you don't have to sit on the phone with them forever. But they can also judge you, I guess, with your radio.
So
voice.
when I get back on that dating app, I'm going to have to ask you to make sure I'm using it right, because I did it and it didn't give me a chance to redo it.
I don't know which app you're using. You can redo it on iMessage. That's how I've done it. I haven't done it on the apps.
Oh, I'm glad I got it right on the first take.
I actually think that you don't get to redo it. I've seen TikToks about that.
You don't get to redo it?
I don't know for sure, but I've seen.
Oh, I thought it was just user error on my end.
No.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I got it right on the first take. Because can you imagine if you just ended up sending some rambling message to nowhere?
I'll have to look into that. But I saw a TikTok of somebody saying that, and that they sent a very embarrassing voice memo on the app. And I was like, well, if they are open to humor, they'll be fine with it. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I don't know. I think it's very important to take breaks. It's a good cleanse. You can really self-reflect. I feel like I've been talking a lot about self-reflection lately and just taking pauses because I'm doing that right now.
It gives me good energy to recognize that I can be in that same space. And actually, I get a lot out of you lecturing me about self-reflection and romanticizing my life, because it brings me back to our previous episodes where you've talked about this. And you've highlighted very valuable information about why it's important to do that and that it's okay to do that. I had gotten lost over the years in terms of like taking care of myself, because I'm so busy, been so busy taking care of everybody else, that your tips have helped me say, you know what, it is okay to go get a pedicure. I did that 2 weeks ago.
A-okay.
Do you know what I never have done in the past is gone and get a pedicure? I did that. I stopped on a random Sunday, and they almost told me they didn't have any appointments. I'm like, oh, yeah, you do. You have an appointment for this girl, because I'm showing up because Caitlyn has told me it is okay to romanticize my life. And I spent 2 hours in the pedicure chair, and I walked away with cute pink toenails. And that's because of you.
Well, good. I'm glad, because I just, like, you've come from, raising a family. So obviously you went into it. Your life has gone in a different direction than mine early on. I'm just kind of the reverse, but I was forced to do that earlier because it's the only thing I have control of. I'm in control of my life. I want to do this. I'm not going to waste my time with this. I mean, I have wasted time with things, but like I've learned from it. But it's like, this is what I have control of. It's the things that I like. If I want to go do this, I'm going to do this. Whatever's meant to come my way is going to come my way. Hopefully, I think.
Well, great. Stephen, thanks for your email. Thanks for being a listener of Dating at Her Age. We appreciate it. I know I hear from several men who listen to our podcast. I love it. Spread the word to your friends. In fact, we got a message from a woman who's listening from, I believe she said Canada. Thank you so much. I've heard from people in California who listen. So our home base is Salt Lake City, Utah. Of course, you can find us on kslpodcast.com. You can find us where Caitlyn and I work at kslnewsradio.com and any of your favorite podcast platforms. And remind them of the Dater Hater hotline, where we might use your voicemail on the air if you leave us a message.
Yeah, if you want to leave a voicemail with your crazy dating story or any sort of question or just topic we should bring up, 801-575-5599. You can give us a call there and leave us a message. That's 801-575-5599. Thanks for listening.